Hey everyone, so this past week we had some pretty interesting news. 24-year-old Madison Cawthorn had a pretty big, I would call it an upset, win against Linda Bennett in North Carolina's 11th district. And what's significant about this is if Madison Cawthorn were to win in November, he would be the youngest person to ever hold a congressional seat. And so that alone is pretty interesting. But a lot of people are saying that he has the potential to be kind of the next AOC for the Republican Party. And so I wanted to watch a short interview with him, and then we'll take a look at his website, and then what I kind of think of all this.
I think it's a total idea of messaging.
Ooh, sorry about that. First, let me just say, so this is in response to a question on how can Republicans attract more younger people, since obviously Madison is so young.
With the way that we oftentimes messaged, whether it's border security or many other issues, when we talked about border security, it sounded like a lot of the Republicans were just xenophobic. Whereas, you know, Dan, just as well as I do, that it was based completely on the fact of national security. We have these cartels south of our border that are just absolutely extremely dangerous, and pitched to people like that, and pitched when it talked about the drug trafficking and the human trafficking, no one can really deny that we need a border wall.
What would you most like to accomplish if you become a member of Congress?
A two-faced thing. One, I would love to be the face of healthcare reform for the Republicans. I really think we need to deregulate that market and allow some more free market capitalism to take root. I think that would really lower costs and enable a lot of people to be able to get more access to healthcare. Secondly, would be infrastructure reform. And I'm talking about high-tech infrastructure. In the 1930s, we had the Electrification Act, which brought electricity to almost every single house in the country. I think we need something like that for broadband internet access, especially in this era where we'll have a lot of children doing probably telelearning for this upcoming semester of these high school, elementary, and middle schools. And so I really think that we need to be able to allow people to enter into this high-tech marketplace.
All right, and so let me just say that first off, when I first heard of Madison, I thought that this guy sounded actually really interesting. He's a 24-year-old, really young, and so when he was, I'm not sure how old he was, but obviously younger than 24. He was in a car crash and he was paralyzed from the waist down, which is really sad, really tragic accident, and he was left with, I believe it was $3 million worth of medical debt. So that's a ton of medical debt. And it said in like the short bio I was reading about him that one of his main issues is healthcare reform. And so because of that, I'm like, are we gonna see this like young Republican, this up and comer, start to accept maybe some Medicare for all, like maybe not exactly Medicare for all, but some sort of single payer healthcare system because of this medical debt. Um, Needless to say, I was a little disappointed when I found out that Madison seems to be a very run of the mill Republican, and why I think that that's kind of significant is a lot of people are talking about him like he might be the next AOC, but for Republicans. And why I think that that's not gonna happen is because I think that one of the things about AOC is she brought not only was she young, she brought a lot to the table. She brought a lot of new ideas. She really kind of I mean, she's talking about worker-owned co-op. She's talking about the Green New Deal. She's talking about, obviously Bernie was already talking about a Medicare for all, but she's very outspoken on issues that most people in Congress are not talking about. Like obviously you had Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib enter Congress at the same time. So you have some people, you have Pramila Jayapal, you have some people talking about these things, but AOC is super outspoken and she's also incredibly charismatic. No knock against Madison or anything, but I don't think that he has the same level of charisma and speaking abilities that AOC does. Just because AOC is like, I mean, an incredible speaker. And so I think that there is that aspect because we see, I mean, let's talk about what Madison was saying there a little bit. I mean, he said, "Oh, like people are worried that like Republicans are a little more xenophobic, but in reality, there's these cartels that we have to worry about, and there's like trafficking, and like I hate to break it to Madison, but like I mean, the definition of the word xenophobic is like afraid of immigrants. If I'm not mistaken, that is the definition. And so literally saying, "Oh, we're not xenophobic," and then fear mongering about immigrants coming from the southern border, I don't really know what else to call that. And then the same conclusion he comes to is he says, "Oh, I'm not like these other Republicans, but yeah, we need a border wall." Um, what you're not doing anything different there. And it's the same thing with healthcare. Is I mean, I thought that we would get this like refreshing conservative take maybe on a single payer system, but instead, I mean, same old, same old. wants to deregulate, and I think that would be just disastrous for our healthcare system. I think so many people would lose their healthcare, and in a time where we have record level unemployment, where people who had their healthcare tied to their job, they don't have healthcare anymore because a lot of people lost their job, and it just shows what a flawed system it is to have that kind of built into it. And so here is Madison's website, and I just wanted to look at a few of the issues to really also just kind of highlight what I'm talking about, where he's very run of the mill. I found it really in the why I'm running. He mentions by name Nancy Pelosi and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, two politicians who are very different in my opinion, but it shows kind of this lack of sophistication in my opinion, because by not distinguishing between Nancy Pelosi and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I mean, they're two very, very different politicians. One of them is much, much more conservative. With healthcare, basically, I mean, one of the lines in the healthcare segment is, "I strongly oppose the Democrats' plan to create socialized medicine." I think that is, I don't think there's very much fleshed out on his website. I don't look at a lot of these lesser known congressional races a lot, so I don't know if this is run of the mill, if this is what these issue sections usually look like. It is definitely not what I would expect. I would expect a lot more kind of bulk and depth. I would like to be able to look at like what actual policies you're supporting, but like, one of the things is I don't think that Madison is really going to break with conservative dogma on a lot of this stuff. So I don't think that he really needs to go super deep. He's opposed to sanctuary cities is what he discusses in his immigration section. He opposes tax increases, very, very broad. We just don't need more tax increases. I mean, that's like, I mean, I guess that's, simple. Some people might like that, but doesn't really go pro-life. You could expect that. A lot of fear mongering about the debt, and then followed up down here in the national security section. He talks about how he wants to just build up the military, and so I just don't see how you can say, "Oh, like I'm worried about the debt, but like military we need to spend more on that." I mean, big Second Amendment guy. He mentions in his like bio section on his website he's like 8th generation, and just I personally find that a little weird. I've just always thought it was like a little weird when like people take a lot of pride in like people that they've like never met before, and I just thought it was a little interesting. But regardless, I don't see Madison making the same waves that AOC did, because I actually think that there's a really good chance he wins his congressional seat. I think the seat has been held since 2013 by Mark Meadows, Republican. I mean, that's a long time for Republicans to hold a seat. Before that, it was Democrat, going back to 2000. I want to say 7 is when it was a Democrat before that. So it could potentially be a toss-up. Who knows if it was Mark Meadows just kind of holding down the House with the Republicans, and that there's a lot of room to shake up. I think the name of who Madison will be going against, his name is Morris Davis, I believe. And in the primary, he got a few, I think 20,000 more votes than Madison did, but it's a little unfair because what happened with Madison's race is that it was a runoff, so like no one reached like the threshold that they needed to, so him and the other person, they had like a runoff election, and he won through that, and so it was a really, really close race. But I think it's pretty up in the air, but I think that the money is probably on Madison, because there's going to be a lot of media attention surrounding this potentially youngest congressperson ever. So yeah, I think that you could fairly safely say that Madison is going to win. That would probably be my bet as of right now. But I just don't see him going into Congress and making the same waves that AOC did. And also, I mean, we've seen with kind of the Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA, his attempt to reach out to college students, is just that a lot of these conservative policies just don't resonate with younger people the way. I mean, just look at, at my college campus and at college campuses across the country, Students for Bernie was just a vibrant thing. There's so many people, so many people are active in this, and just the college Republicans and Turning Point USAs across the country, they have a bit of a hard time getting in touch with younger people, and I don't think that just being young is going to get young people to vote for you. I think obviously we can see that with Bernie Sanders, very old person. It is the ideas. It is people don't usually give young people as much credit. They're like, it's a young guy. He'll win. I do know that Madison's opponent is a proponent of single payer and a living wage. So, I mean, obviously I would much rather his opponent win. But I think it would be interesting, but I think that people be careful. This is not the next AOC, in my opinion. Not even the next Dan Crenshaw, really. Dan Crenshaw is someone who I think is much more of an up-and-comer in the Republican Party. He's someone that I think will almost definitely make a presidential run, probably within the next 10 years. So he's definitely someone to look at. But anyway, I thought this was an interesting story to look at, and so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you disagreed with anything I said, please leave a comment down below. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.